it's a really good time to be purveyors of data stuff. Everybody seems to love data. I remember it was, gosh, like 7 years ago, The Economist did a whole issue, like a dedicated issue on big data. I don't remember if anybody remembers that. I'm like, wow, this is different. This is really kind of interesting. And users want data. Everybody's talking about Google. Everybody's talking about Facebook, how they've created data cultures, how the middle manager has been replaced by data, like really crazy stuff. And I scratch my head and I say, here we are at Warby Parker, like maybe one of the coolest companies in the country. And we're in the kind of coolest city in the country. Sorry, I'm from San Francisco, but I will still give it to New York. And I'm saying, what is going on? What, WTF? Right? And we're talking about data. We're like, data, like what? Like we're talking about culture. And I have to be careful because I'm from Santa Cruz now. You moved down. That's where Looker's headquarters. And we're a little bit granola, right? We're a little hippie down there a little bit. Looker's not so much, but the places. And I'm saying we're going to talk about data culture. We can't say that. That sounds stupid. Like that is just like data-driven data culture. That's that has like no credibility. But we didn't start saying it until we saw our customers actually doing it. And I'm still surprised every day that you all are creating these environments around data that are so impactful and so many people are using. So I'm going to not make this a Looker commercial. What I want to do is I want to talk first about Looker vision in this idea of data culture. And we really believe at Looker, like put up or shut up, go do it, don't talk about it. So we usually don't talk, at this high level stuff around like culture and things like that. And then I thought what I would do is I would take you through a couple of ways that some of our customers, and not just the specific customers I'm going to talk about, but really all of the customers in one way or another are starting to implement and where they've been successful, not even so much with Looker, but around creating these environments where people are making better decisions based on data. Okay? So, so I said big data once. And I just said it again. How many people cringe when they hear the word big data? Like, I cringe. I'm just like, oh, that's horrible, right? But it wasn't a good for nothing, right? There is benefit out of this whole idea. And I would argue what the benefit is out of big data is big, fast, cheap databases. Like at a whole other scale. If you think about the problem in data, it was fundamentally that Oracle was really, really expensive and hard to deploy. Not because Oracle was anything wrong with it. It was just, it was a different time, right? It was a different way that we sold software and the rest of it. But what's happened in this whole big data thing is we created these really fast, cheap databases. And I don't care whether it's Redshift or the new Microsoft stuff or Spark or some of the Hive stuff. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, we've created ways that we can go collect everything. And I would say that more of the benefit of this big data craze is not so much in the event data and the machine data and all that kind of stuff, that's part of it, but it's now we can take every element of business data, every transaction, every table, everything out of all of our systems and we can put it in one place and we can do it really, really cheaply. And that is really big, at least from our perspective. And I'll take you through why we think that is the case. There's going to be a little audience participation, so you can have your smartphone out. So, data is still like the card catalog. Like, the way that users consume data is still like the card catalog. Like, if I want to go find something, I kind of look and I talk to somebody, a librarian, and then I go pull something on, look at that. Oh, no, I want to look at something else, and I go over here. It's like really siloed. It has not had anywhere near the transformation as the web. Right? I even hate web, web and how that's 10 years ago, which is true. But in the web, before you had to look things up and you'd have to look at TV Guide if I was in a bar argument about the 8th episode of Gilligan's Island and I really had to know what that was about. What was the 8th episode of Gilligan's Island about? But now I can just go look. And then I can say, oh, this is what it was about. And then I might see something there that triggers my interest. And I might say, well, what about Bob Denver? What other things was he? And I might look at that, right? And I can really quickly go look. And then at some point I could say well, I bet you, he was really tall. And no, he was really short. I don't know. So you can go and you can say, how tall was Bob Denver? So do that in your smartphone right now. Say, how tall was Bob Denver? And what you'll see is not just hits anymore. You will see the answer, right? It's in the little white box at the top. And it's like, this is the reliable answer. At some point, not only did it become easy to access data, or easy to access information, it became reliable. And if you remember early when you were searching for stuff on the web, it was never reliable. You get 100 different answers to that question. But at some point, it got reliable. And we are nowhere near that in terms of data. And that is really key to creating data culture. So there's a big disconnect. So, you know, what we're seeing is that this user access to interconnected data is really what it's all about. And that is what's creating the problem in shifting the culture to having people really depend on data daily to do their job. That's our fundamental thesis at Looker. And how do we alleviate that problem? How do we make it better? How do we give more access to more people more quickly and more reliably? So, you know, the fundamental problem in a lot of ways is this idea that we talk about called data breadlines. And it's literally like the Depression sometimes when we are servicing our users. Like, the rich people get data and the poor people do not. If I'm the CEO, I can get all the data I want. Like, I want to know this, yeah, someone will go find that out for me. But, you know, if I'm down in ops or like I'm out in sales, like I don't have data to do my job every day. I'm a data have-not. I'm waiting in the breadline. So I'll ask my first question and maybe I'll get an answer. And then I'm like, well, that only just kind of piqued my interest. So I'm going to ask a second question. And now, like, the data team's going like, back of the line, get to the back of the line. Like, I can't give you that data. And then maybe I get that. And then it's like the third question, forget it. I'm not going to ask the question anymore. But I have 100 questions. And I'm giving up at 3, right? And I think what we have to do is we have to figure out ways to let people ask 80 questions, 90, maybe even the 100 questions out there. People have to stop being limited to only asking sort of the 1, 2, or 3 questions. So some people might be saying, yeah, I don't believe you. What are you saying? I don't believe you. There are lots of tools out there, and there's data democratization. We can barely say that word, data democratization. And I would argue that in a lot of ways, this whole data democratization is really data ochlocracy, mob rule. I think in some ways what we've done is we've given people self-service tools, and we've given them spreadsheets, and we've given them all these things, and we've armed them with like bats and sticks, and then we put them in conference rooms, and we let them have something that we lovingly call data brawls. And everyone argues, and it's like, that's not right, you're looking at LTV wrong, that's not right, that's not even revenue, you didn't put tax in the thing, and all this kind of stuff. And we've armed these people to have data brawls, and nobody is agreeing anymore on what the data is. And that's sort of where we are now. And you might say, well, no, I still don't believe you. You know, it's like Tableau's pretty good and stuff like that. Those are great tools. So even if it's not that bad, I keep going on the metaphors. It's like the parable of the blind man and the elephant, right? You know, where we have all these silos of data, and everybody has their sales data, and people have this other data over in ops, and people have inventory data, and everybody's looking at the same big picture of the same company, and someone's saying, oh, it's a wall. No, it's over here, it's a spear. You know, that whole story. And that is probably at best where we are right now. We really aren't providing people broad access to lots of information, at least generally in industry. There's some companies who are starting to do it, some in this room, but that's been a fundamental problem. So it's really like, from our perspective, from Looker's perspective, it's time for a whole new experience. We believe that there's a new way that people can experience data, that they can experience at scale, that we can use all of this crazy infrastructure that's been developed over the last 5 or 7 years. We can put new kinds of tools on top that allow people to access not stuff in silos, but really in a whole new way, where we use this term, which Jen's going to cringe now because I'm going to say it. It's like the intranet of data, right? We hate the word intranet, but it's like, that's what they've created these things that now people are like sharing data and looking around and doing all this stuff. And really what we want to do is have data kind of have the same shift that the web had as sort of really took hold in Google, or Salesforce.com had as they reinvented the way software would be deployed. It's really like this fundamental shift in a new way to access and look at and explore and collaborate and talk about and share and send links around about data. Like that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a new kind of an experience. And that sounds really like crazy, I understand. And we are from Santa Cruz, but it is what you all are doing. And if I would have thought 2 years ago that we would be talking about anything more than like how data analysts would get value out of data by creating look-ML models, I just wouldn't have believed it, right? But what we're seeing repeatedly in our customers is this push towards a new kind of an environment where people in the warehouse, people in ops, people in all kinds of different functions in an organization are using data to make better decisions. So we've really accumulated a nice set of customers that use data really well. We're approaching 400 customers now. We're growing really quickly. And we've seen there's kind of these 4 tenets to creating a data culture. Things that happen, things that people do well. And they sort of break down like this, right? You have this notion of the ability to centralize data. And like the data warehouse is dead, long live the data warehouse. I mean, it's somewhere in there, right? We see that there's a very big requirement to create, some form of, reliable views on the data, some source of truth, to have some form of governance over how the data is described. And universally, we see there's benefit to giving it to everybody, right? To not limiting who can have it. Just had a great conversation with Carl Orby about this before. So fundamentally, what the whole big data thing gave us is the ability to do this, to centralize the data so that we can ask questions of it that are really deep. And what we need is a tool on top, and I think what Looker's trying to build is the tool on top. So the first is, a lot of organizations, I think we heard it from the speakers today, are starting to do that. They're putting it in Redshift, they're putting it in Astra, they're putting it in these relatively inexpensive databases and storing lots of it. And I would say that there are no magic ways to accomplish real deep data insights. I mean, federation, composite, all those kinds of technologies existed, but they really haven't panned out to the level that we wanted them to. So centralization is still really key. The second is, creating this reliable source of truth. So I don't know if anybody went to the HubSpot. They did a look and tell. Actually, it was up in Boston. But, the idea of using data throughout the organization and actually, creating this data culture drives, behind it that the data has to be correct. Like, we can't always be fighting about the data. And one of the things that HubSpot did that was really interesting is they actually exposed the sales commission and performance data to the salespeople. So, okay, that has to be right. Like, that's how people are going to get paid. All they will focus on if it's not right is that it's not right. Like, they'll stop selling. So, and if you know HubSpot is probably one of the most advanced, sales kinds of organization. Mark's written books about selling and stuff like that. It's really an interesting sales organization. But what they did not only was create this reliable source of truth about all this information out of Salesforce.com and how it represents and how commission structures work and all that stuff, they put into it the view of retention and how customers were using the application, because they were able to get very advanced in sales comp there and say it wasn't just about selling software, it's about how successful your customers are. So if your customers are going to churn or if they're going to be unhealthy, you need to know that because it's going to affect your comp structure. So the interesting thing here is to take multiple sources of data, ensure that it's true, right? A sale is a sale, the customer score is a customer score, and put it together so the salespeople could use it so that they'll be motivated throughout the month or the quarter to hit their target, right? That's interesting. Like, that's really saying, I'm going to create a reliable source of truth. I'm going to, give it to people, and I'm not going to have them spin out of control saying that the data is wrong. Really, really interesting sort of data-oriented stuff. The third is give it to everyone. And like Dollar Shave Club, people know Dollar Shave Club from the video. They were really what we see in a lot of the customers. you know, I thought I would only have the data people use it. That's what everybody says. I think we'll just have the data team use this. Now then what happens is someone sends an email, like with a link, and then everybody's using it. You can't stop it at that point, and that's the way it should be, because there's benefit when you start to share data with everybody. Suddenly people are like, oh, I need to know that. Can I go find that? Well, I didn't know that existed. Now I have that. It's like this basic collaboration that starts to happen. And the really interesting thing is when you start to share it, that's the only time these data brawls end, because you vet it. Right? So it's when people start to use the data that they're like, oh, that's wrong. Okay, let's adjust it. We'll adjust it in our case in the model. Oh, okay, great, now we have it right. Hold it, you're not looking at this side. Let's go adjust that. So when everybody has access to it, it becomes reliable. Right? And that was one of the old problems with data modeling and things like that. People never really saw like what was going on. But now, you know, we really think that if we can give access to everyone and have them vetted and make it easy and not such a black box, the quality of data gets better through everybody using it. So we really argue like everybody uses it. That's not just self-fulfill, like buy more, look. I mean, we really believe that's the right thing to do. I said it wouldn't be a commercial. And then lastly, and this is like, we're really starting to see this now a couple of years in with Looker customers, is universally data is becoming operational. So what do I mean? Like people are using data day to day to do their job. So I don't know if you know The RealReal. I mean, they're a $200 million sales company now that sell luxury consignment goods. And they came out and did our Looker new hire talk, and they were saying, you know, what they're able to do now, you know, after a year and a half, is in the morning, they'll look at what's soft, like what elements are selling, how things are teeing up based on prior days. And the teams will actually adjust what they're doing in the day to affect afternoon sales. Like that's operational. That's, you know, that now is we're using data. And I think that's ultimately where the value can be, where we're actually performing our job better on data. I mean, right now, a lot of what goes on is sort of the investigation. I think we should go into the New York market. Let's investigate that. Let's see, you know, and we'll do some research on it. And that's valid. That's really important. But when we can actually make it operational to affect performance today, you know, that's even better. I think that is a key element of sort of this data culture, when we're really using data to make, you know, better decisions in the day. So, you know, the common thread, and this isn't just like each of these companies only doing this stuff, is that a few of these elements start to exist in most of our customers. You know, that's really at the end of the day where we're seeing success in companies who are saying, you know, hey, we actually became like this more data-oriented culture. You know, we've typically seen several of these things start to be implemented, right? And I think the challenge for us, you know, as people involved in data, you know, as professionals, is to create this new experience for our end users, right? You know, so if we can actually allow people to experience something new, a new way of looking at data, that's ultimately what we need to be pushing ourselves to do. You know, it's not good enough just to give the spreadsheet download or things like that. Really, I think where success is going to come, and ultimately where this market and this industry is going, is oriented towards, you know, this new experience. I know that's high level.